I catch you under my sheets.
The most dangerous thing a desperate woman can do is put her desire in writing. The second most dangerous, send it to the wrong man. Jessica Hampton was 27, unmarried, and running out of time. At the Moon Festival, after too much mead and a friend's reckless dare, she made a choice that would change everything. She wrote 8 bold words on a piece of parchment. 8 words meant for a charming nobleman who had made her feel seen. If I catch you under my sheets, you will. But the note never reached him. The servant delivered it to the wrong man. The Alpha King himself. And when Nathaniel Williamson read those words, he didn't correct the mistake, though he accepted the invitation. Now Jessica must face the consequences of her boldness and answer one impossible question. Did she accidentally invite disaster into her life, or exactly what she'd been waiting for all along? The quill hovered over the paper for longer than it should have. Jessica sat in the corner of the Moon Festival hall, candlelight flickering across blank parchment, her friends whisper in her ear, like permission to be reckless. Write it. Something bold, something he'll never forget. And Jessica, emboldened by courage she didn't know she had, finally did. Chapter 1. The note that was never meant for a king. Jessica Hampton had learned early in life that being invisible was safer than being noticed. At 27, or she existed in the peculiar space reserved for unmarried noblewomen who had somehow failed to secure their future. Her mother reminded her of this failure daily. Her father discussed her like she was a business transaction that had fallen through. And her younger cousin, Gabriella Phillips, freshly engaged at 23, looked at her with something close to pity every time they met. Jessica hated pity more than anything else in the world. The Moon Festival arrived like it did every year, transforming the royal castle into something out of a dream. Grand chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting golden light across marble floors, polished to mirror brightness. Silk gowns in every color imaginable swirled through the great hall as noble families gathered to see and be seen. The air smelled of honeyed mead and roasted meats, or of perfume and ambition. Jessica stood near one of the tall windows, watching the crowd with the same detached observation she always employed at these events. Her gown was beautiful, deep emerald silk that brought out the color of her eyes. But she wore it like armor rather than decoration. Protection against the whispers she knew followed her everywhere. There's Jessica Hampton, still unmarried. Her mother must be beside herself. I heard even the Cantrell boy turned her down. The whispers never said what was really wrong with her. They never mentioned that she asked too many questions during dinner conversations, or that she refused to giggle at jokes she didn't find funny, or that she had once told Lord Wesley Lambert that his opinion on women's education was not just wrong but actively harmful. No, the whispers only ever said she was unmarried, as if that single fact explained everything. Stop hiding by the window and come dance. Liliana Bullock appeared at her elbow, pressing a cup of sweet mead into her hand. Liliana had been her friend since childhood, one of the few people who seemed to genuinely enjoy her company rather than tolerate it. I'm not hiding, I'm observing. You're always observing, that's your problem. Liliana took a long drink from her own cup. You need to participate, flirt a little, smile at someone powerful. I'd rather swallow glass. Liliana laughed, the sound bright and careless. That's why I love you. But seriously, Jessica, your mother cornered me earlier, asking if I knew any suitable men. She's getting desperate. Jessica's fingers tightened on her cup. My mother is always desperate. It's her natural state. Across the hall, she caught sight of her mother, Lydia Hampton, speaking with a group of older women, all of them casting not-so-subtle glances in Jessica's direction. Her father Morris stood nearby, deep in conversation with several merchants, probably discussing trade routes and profit margins. Neither of them looked happy. Jessica took a long drink of mead, letting the sweetness coat her throat. "Oh no," Liliana breathed beside her. "Don't look now, but Eden Maxwell just walked in." Jessica looked. She couldn't help it. Eden Maxwell moved through the crowd like he owned every inch of space he occupied. Tall and handsome with dark hair that fell just so across his forehead. He had the kind of smile that made women forget their own names. He wore his nobility like a second skin, comfortable and confident in a way Jessica had never managed to be. She had been fascinated by him for months, ever since he had asked her about a book she was reading, and actually listened to her answer. They had talked for nearly an hour that day, about literature and philosophy, and whether people were fundamentally good or fundamentally selfish. He had disagreed with half her opinions, but never once made her feel stupid for having them. "You're staring," Liliana whispered. "I'm observing." "You're besotted." "I'm intrigued. There's a difference." Eden was surrounded immediately by admirers, young women who knew exactly how to laugh at his jokes and touch his arm at precisely the right moment. Jessica watched him smile at them, effortlessly charming, and felt something twist in her chest. She would never be one of those women. She didn't know how. "You should talk to him," Liliana said. "And say what? Hello, Eden. I think about you more than is probably healthy for someone who has spoken to you exactly 3 times. That's actually not bad. Very honest." Jessica shook her head, but she was smiling despite herself. The mead was already making her feel warm and loose, like her edges had softened somehow. She took another drink. "You know what your problem is?" Liliana leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You think too much. You analyze everything until you've talked yourself out of taking any risks. Taking risks is how people get hurt. Taking risks is how people get anything worth having." Liliana's eyes gleamed with mischief. "So Josh, you want to know what I think you should do? I have a feeling you're going to tell me anyway. Write him a note. Something bold. Something he'll never forget." Jessica nearly choked on her mead. "Absolutely not." "Why not? What's the worst that could happen?" "He could read it. That's the worst that could happen." "Exactly. He reads it. He's either intrigued or he's not, and either way you finally know where you stand instead of spending another 6 months wondering." Liliana pulled a small piece of parchment and a pencil from her bag. She was always prepared for schemes. "Come on. What would you say to him if you were brave enough?" Jessica stared at the blank parchment. Her heart was beating faster, whether from the mead or the suggestion she couldn't tell. This is insane. This is fun, but there's a difference. The mead had definitely gone to her head, because suddenly the idea didn't seem quite as insane as it should have. What would she say to Eden Maxwell if she were brave enough? If she could bypass all the social rules and expectations and just be honest about what she wanted? Her hand reached for the pencil, almost of its own accord. "That's my girl," Liliana breathed. Jessica's fingers trembled slightly as she pressed pencil to paper. She shouldn't do this. She should put down the pencil and walk away and maintain whatever dignity she had left. Instead, she wrote 8 words that would change everything. "If I catch you under my sheets, you will." She stopped, leaving the sentence unfinished. The implication was clear enough without stating it explicitly. Bold without being crude, suggestive without being vulgar. Her face felt hot as she stared at what she had written. "Perfect," Liliana whispered, reading over her shoulder. "Now fold it and I'll have a servant deliver it." "Wait, I didn't say I was actually sending it. You just wrote it. That's the same thing. Liliana was already folding the parchment with practiced efficiency. Now point him out. Jessica's heart hammered against her ribs. This was madness. Complete and total madness. But she had already written the words, and Liliana was already signaling to a passing servant, and somehow her hand was lifting to point discreetly across the crowded hall, toward where Eden Maxwell stood, laughing at something one of his admirers had said. Except Eden moved at precisely that moment, turning to greet someone new, and Jessica's gesture, though meant to indicate the handsome nobleman with the easy smile, instead pointed toward a different man entirely. A tall figure dressed in dark, formal attire, standing near the throne platform with the kind of stillness that suggested absolute confidence. His shoulders were broad, his posture perfect without seeming stiff. Even from across the room, there was something commanding about him. The servant followed her gesture, took the folded note from Liliana's hand, and moved quickly through the crowd. Jessica watched with growing horror as the servant approached not Eden Maxwell, but the other man. The one who turned at the servant's approach with the kind of authority that made people instinctively straighten their spines. Alpha King Nathaniel Williamson, the most powerful man in the entire kingdom. The servant bowed low, murmured something Jessica couldn't hear, and placed the folded parchment into the king's hand. "Oh God," Jessica whispered. "Oh no, oh no, no, no." "What?" Liliana looked confused. "What's wrong?" "That's not Eden. That's the king. That's the actual king." Liliana's face went pale. "What?" Jessica couldn't breathe. Across the hall she watched Nathaniel Williamson unfold the parchment with elegant fingers. His eyes moved across the words she had written, words meant for Eden Maxwell, words that were bold and suggestive and absolutely inappropriate to send to the Alpha King. "If I catch you under my sheets, you will—" Nathaniel's expression didn't change. He simply read the note once. Then again, more slowly. Then the corner of his mouth lifted in something that might have been a smile. He looked up, scanning the crowd. But Jessica turned away so fast she nearly tripped over her own gown. Her entire body felt like it was on fire. This couldn't be happening. This absolutely could not be happening. "Maybe he doesn't know who sent it," Liliana whispered urgently. "Maybe the servant didn't tell him." But Jessica remembered the servant bowing, murmuring something. Of course the servant had told him. Servants always announced who sent messages. It was basic protocol, which meant Nathaniel Williamson knew exactly who had sent him that note. Jessica Hampton, the unmarried noblewoman who couldn't even manage to flirt correctly, had just accidentally sent the Alpha King an invitation to her bed. "I need to leave," Jessica said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Right now." "You can't leave. That would look suspicious. More suspicious than sending the king a note about my sheets?" Liliana grabbed her arm, keeping her in place with surprising strength. "Listen to me. You're going to stay calm. You're going to smile. And you're going to pray that he thinks it was a joke or a mistake or literally anything except a serious invitation." Jessica's hands were shaking. She couldn't remember ever being this mortified in her entire life, and that was saying something, considering how many social disasters she had already survived. Across the hall, Nathaniel Williamson folded the note carefully and slipped it into his inner pocket, like he was keeping it. Jessica's stomach dropped somewhere around her knees. "He's keeping it," she whispered. "Why is he keeping it? Maybe he keeps all his correspondence. Nobody keeps random notes from noblewomen they don't even know. You don't know that he doesn't know you." Jessica turned to stare at her friend. "What?" Liliana shrugged, looking uncomfortable. "I mean, you're a noblewoman. You attend all the major events. Maybe he's noticed you before. The Alpha King does not notice unmarried noblewomen who can't keep their mouths shut at dinner parties. Maybe this one does." Before Jessica could respond, she caught movement in her peripheral vision. Nathaniel Williamson was walking through the crowd, not toward her, thankfully, but toward the exit. He moved with the kind of easy confidence that parted crowds without him having to ask. People bowed as he passed. Women stared. Men straightened their postures. He didn't look back, or Jessica watched him disappear through the great doors and felt some of the tension leave her body. Maybe it was fine. Maybe he would forget about it by morning. Maybe he would laugh it off as some foolish noblewoman's mistake and never think about it again. See? Liliana squeezed her arm. He's leaving. It's fine. Everything is fine. Everything is not fine. I just sent the king the most inappropriate message of my entire life. Inappropriate, yes, but also memorable. Liliana grinned suddenly. You have to admit, at least you finally did something interesting. Jessica wanted to argue, but she was too busy replaying the moment in her mind. The way Nathaniel had read the note, the way the corner of his mouth had lifted, the way he had carefully folded it and put it in his pocket instead of tossing it aside, like it mattered, like it meant something. She shook her head, pushing the thought away. She was reading too much into it. The king probably received dozens of inappropriate messages from hopeful noblewomen. This was nothing special. Nothing worth remembering. She spent the rest of the evening avoiding everyone, especially Eden Maxwell, and definitely anywhere the king might be. When her mother finally allowed them to leave, Jessica practically ran to their carriage. That night, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of her chamber, replaying the disaster over and over in her mind. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Nathaniel Williamson reading those 8 terrible words. If I catch you under my sheets, you will... She grabbed her pillow and pressed it over her face, groaning into the fabric. She had survived a lot of embarrassment in her 27 years, but this was definitely the worst. Nothing could possibly make this situation any more humiliating than it already was. That was when someone knocked on her chamber door. Jessica sat up, confused. It was late, well past midnight. No one should be knocking on her door. Yes? She called out. A servant's voice answered from the other side. A message for Lady Hampton. Jessica's heart stopped. A message. At this hour. She climbed out of bed, wrapping a robe around her nightgown, and opened the door. A young servant girl stood there, holding a folded piece of parchment. This arrived for you, my lady. The messenger said it was urgent. Jessica took the parchment with trembling fingers. The servant curtsied and disappeared down the hall before she could ask any questions. She closed the door and moved to the candle by her bedside. Her hands shook as she unfolded the parchment. The handwriting was elegant, masculine, and completely unfamiliar, but the words made her blood run cold. Then perhaps I should come see if you mean it. No signature, no explanation. Just those 9 words. Jessica read them 3 times, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. Someone had responded to her note. Someone had not only received it, but decided to reply. But who? Eden Maxwell. Had the servant somehow delivered a copy to both men? Was Eden the one responding? She wanted to believe that. She desperately wanted to believe that. But something in her gut told her otherwise. The handwriting was too confident, too controlled, too much like someone who was used to giving orders and having them obeyed. While Jessica sat down on her bed, staring at the message. Someone was coming to see if she meant it, and she had absolutely no idea who. Chapter 2. The King Who Decided to Play Along. Nathaniel Williamson stood in his private study, the note from Jessica Hampton spread on his desk like evidence. If I catch you under my sheets, you will. He had read it at least a dozen times since receiving it at the Moon Festival. Each time, the corner of his mouth lifted with the same dark amusement. Jessica Hampton. The name had been familiar even before the servant whispered it to him. He had been aware of her for years, ever since she had attended her first moon festival at 19. Fresh from the countryside, nervous and trying too hard to appear sophisticated. He had watched her evolve over the years, had watched her realize that trying to please everyone was impossible. Watched her stop trying, watched her become sharp instead of soft, direct instead of diplomatic. Most noblewomen at these events fell into two categories: those who desperately sought his attention and those who wanted his power without having to deal with him personally. Jessica Hampton fell into neither category. She barely looked at him, not out of disrespect or fear, but out of genuine disinterest. She attended the required events, wore the appropriate gowns, spoke when spoken to. But her attention was always elsewhere. On books, on conversations with people who interested her, on the world outside the narrow confines of noble politics. Nathaniel found it refreshing, he found it fascinating, and now, apparently, she wanted him under her sheets, except she didn't. The servant had mentioned seeing Lady Hampton point toward someone else entirely. Eden Maxwell, probably. The charming wastrel who collected admirers like trophies and discarded them just as easily. Jessica Hampton wanted Eden Maxwell. But the note had reached Nathaniel instead. He should have corrected the mistake immediately, should have sent a polite message explaining the error, and thought nothing more of it. Instead, he had kept the note. And then he had sent a reply. "Then perhaps I should come see if you mean it." He knew exactly what would happen when she received it. She would assume Eden had written back. She would be nervous, excited, probably terrified. She would prepare herself for a midnight visitor, believing it would be one man. And then Nathaniel would appear instead. Gerald, his closest advisor and one of the few people allowed to speak freely in his presence, would say this was cruel. Westley, his head of security, would say it was dangerous. Edward, his younger brother, would laugh and call him ruthless. They would all be right. But Nathaniel didn't particularly care. He wanted to see what Jessica Hampton was like when she thought no one important was watching. Wanted to see if her boldness extended beyond written words. Wanted to understand what made a woman who barely acknowledged his existence suddenly invite someone into her bed. Even if that invitation had been meant for someone else. There was a knock on his study door. Nathaniel folded the note and slipped it back into his inner pocket. Enter. Gerald walked in, carrying reports that Nathaniel had no interest in reading at this hour. His advisor took one look at his face and stopped. "You're planning something." "I'm always planning something." "You're planning something inadvisable." Gerald set the reports on the desk. "I know that expression. What did you do?" Nathaniel smiled. "I accepted an invitation." "An invitation to what?" "A private meeting." Gerald's eyebrows rose. "With whom?" "Jessica Hampton." There was a long pause. Gerald was very good at long pauses. He used them like weapons, letting silence do the work words couldn't. The unmarried noblewoman who asked Lord Lambert if his brain was decorative during last year's harvest dinner. The very same. "May I ask why you're meeting privately with a woman known for speaking before thinking?" "She invited me." "She invited you," Gerald repeated slowly, "to a private meeting. To her bedchamber. Actually?" Another pause, even longer this time. "I see," Gerald finally said. "And does Lady Hampton know she invited you to her bedchamber?" "Not exactly. Not exactly. She meant to invite someone else. Eden Maxwell, most likely. The message was delivered to me by mistake." Gerald closed his eyes briefly. "And instead of correcting this mistake, you decided to accept the invitation." "Yes." "Your Majesty, with all due respect, this is insane." "This is interesting. There's a difference." This is a recipe for disaster. What do you think will happen when she realizes the error? When she discovers the Alpha King appeared in her bedchamber instead of the man she actually wanted? Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, considering the question. I think she'll be terrified, embarrassed, or probably angry. And that appeals to you. Her reaction appeals to me. Her honesty appeals to me. He pulled the note from his pocket again, smoothing it on the desk. Do you know how many women have tried to seduce me in the past year, alone? I stopped counting at 40. 43, actually, and every single one of them used the same tactics. Subtle touches, meaningful glances, carefully orchestrated moments of privacy. He tapped the note. This is the first time anyone has been direct about it. She wasn't being direct with you. She was being direct with Eden Maxwell. She was being direct with someone. That's what matters. Gerald sat down across from him, a sure sign that he was preparing for a longer argument. What do you actually want from this woman? It was a fair question. Nathaniel had been asking himself the same thing since receiving the note. What did he want from Jessica Hampton? A single night, a conversation, the satisfaction of seeing her bold confidence crumble, or something else entirely? I want to see who she really is, he said finally. Every woman I meet performs for me. They say what they think I want to hear. Act how they think I want them to act. But Jessica Hampton doesn't even notice I exist. And now she's written the most honest message I've received in years. Honest message meant for someone else. Details, Gerald sighed, the sound of a man who knew he had already lost the argument. When are you planning this midnight visit? Tonight? Tonight. Gerald stood abruptly. Your Majesty, I must advise against this. Advise all you want. Oh, I'm still going. At least take Westley with you, for security. I'm visiting a noblewoman's bedchamber, not staging a military raid. A noblewoman who might scream when she realizes who you actually are. That was a valid point. Nathaniel considered it for a moment, then shook his head. She won't scream. She's too proud for that. You're basing this assumption on what, exactly? On watching her refuse to cry when her cousin announced her engagement at last year's spring festival. On watching her smile politely while her mother introduced her to increasingly desperate suitors. On watching her maintain perfect composure while the entire court whispered about her unmarried status. He stood, adjusting his jacket. Jessica Hampton does not fall apart in public. She certainly won't fall apart in private. I hope you're right. So do I. Nathaniel left the study and made his way through the castle corridors, avoiding the areas where guards would feel obligated to follow him. He had memorized the layout of every noble family's residence in the capital years ago, part of his training in understanding potential allies and enemies. The Hampton residence was modest compared to some of the grander estates, but well-maintained and tastefully decorated. Nathaniel approached from the garden side, where trees provided convenient cover and the walls were easier to climb. He had scaled the wall and dropped silently into the garden before he allowed himself to question what he was doing. Breaking into a noblewoman's residence in the middle of the night, accepting an invitation that hadn't been meant for him, and all to satisfy curiosity about a woman who had never given him any indication she wanted his attention. Gerald was right. This was insane. Nathaniel smiled and continued toward the house. He found Jessica's window on the second floor, recognizing it from the candlelight visible through the curtains. The climb was easy, the stone wall providing plenty of handholds. He paused at the window, peering through the gap in the curtains. Jessica sat on her bed, still wearing her robe, staring at something in her hands. The reply he had sent. Probably. Her expression was a mixture of nervousness and excitement and absolute terror. It was the most genuine expression he had ever seen on her face. Nathaniel tapped lightly on the window. Jessica jumped, dropping the parchment. Her eyes went wide as she stared at the window. For a moment, he thought she might actually scream despite his confidence otherwise. Then she took a deep breath, stood, and walked to the window. She opened it slowly, her hands trembling slightly, and found herself face to face with Nathaniel Williamson instead of Eden Maxwell. The look on her face was absolutely worth the climb. Chapter 3. The Midnight Visit. Jessica's mind went completely blank. The Alpha King stood at her window. Actually at her window, like something out of a dream or a nightmare she couldn't quite distinguish between. The moonlight behind him created shadows across his face, making him look even more dangerous than usual. "You invited me," he said calmly, as if climbing through bedroom windows was a perfectly normal activity for royalty. Jessica opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Nathaniel's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "May I come in? Or would you prefer I conduct this conversation from the window ledge?" That broke through her shock. "This conversation? There shouldn't be any conversation. You shouldn't be here at all." "And yet I am. Because someone sent me an invitation." He pulled a familiar piece of parchment from his pocket. A rather bold invitation, actually. Jessica's face burned hot enough to light the entire room. She recognized her own handwriting, her own terrible, thoughtless, absolutely mortifying words. "That wasn't meant for you," she whispered. "I'm aware, but it reached me anyway." He tilted his head slightly. "Now are you going to let me in? Or shall I wake your entire household by having this discussion at full volume?" Jessica glanced over her shoulder at her bedroom door, imagining her mother's reaction if she discovered the Alpha King at her daughter's window. Then she looked back at Nathaniel and made what was possibly the worst decision of her life. She stepped aside. Nathaniel climbed through the window with practiced ease, landing silently on her bedroom floor. He was taller than she remembered, broader through the shoulders. Her chamber suddenly felt very small. "You shouldn't be here," she said again, because apparently her mind could only manage to repeat the obvious. "You already mentioned that." He glanced around her room, taking in the books stacked on every available surface. The writing desk covered in parchment and ink, by the complete absence of the delicate decorations most noble women favored. Interesting choice of reading material. Jessica followed his gaze to the philosophy text lying open on her desk. "I wasn't expecting company. Clearly. Otherwise you might have prepared better for your midnight assignation." "It wasn't supposed to be an assignation. It was supposed to be—" She trailed off, realizing there was no good way to finish that sentence. "Supposed to be what? A rendezvous with Eden Maxwell?" Nathaniel walked further into her room, examining her bookshelf with apparent interest. "Did you really think he would climb through your window?" "I didn't think at all. That's the problem. On the contrary, I think you thought quite a lot. You simply thought about the wrong man." He pulled a book from her shelf, examined the title, put it back. "Political Theory and the Common Good. Light bedtime reading." "Why are you here?" Jessica demanded, finding her voice finally. "If you know the note wasn't meant for you, why did you come?" Nathaniel turned to face her fully, and the intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. "Because I wanted to see what you would do." "What I would do?" "When faced with the consequences of your boldness. When the man who appeared wasn't the safe, charming nobleman you expected, but someone with actual power over your life." He took a step closer. "You write 8 words about catching someone under your sheets, but do you actually mean them? Or are they just another performance?" Jessica's spine straightened. I don't perform for anyone. Don't you? Every woman at the Moon Festival tonight was performing, playing the role society expects. Or you do it too, just in a different way. That's not true, isn't it? You perform indifference. You perform intelligence. You perform not caring what anyone thinks. Another step closer. But that note suggests you do care, at least about one person's opinion. He was close enough now that she could smell whatever cologne he wore, something expensive and masculine that made her head feel fuzzy. She forced herself to maintain eye contact, even though every instinct screamed at her to look away. This isn't fair, she whispered. What isn't fair? You coming here, reading that note, using it against me. Against you? I'm simply taking you at your word. He held up the parchment again. If I catch you under my sheets, you will. You left that sentence unfinished. I'm curious about how it ends. Jessica's heart hammered against her ribs. But you're the Alpha King. You can't just appear in women's bedrooms demanding answers to inappropriate questions. I can't? Who's going to stop me? Basic decency? He laughed, the sound low and genuinely amused. Basic decency hasn't been invited to this conversation. You made sure of that when you wrote this note. For the last time, I didn't write it for you. But you did write it, which means somewhere in that brilliant, overthinking mind of yours, you wanted something. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. What did you want? Jessica Hampton. No one ever used her first name without permission. The intimacy of it made her skin prickle with awareness. I wanted... She stopped, unsure how to explain. I wanted to feel like I mattered to someone, like I was worth pursuing instead of just endured. The honesty surprised her, how she hadn't meant to say that, hadn't meant to give him anything real. But Nathaniel's expression softened slightly, the sharp edges of his amusement giving way to something else. You think Eden Maxwell would make you feel that way? I thought he might. He's charming and intelligent, and he actually listens when I talk, instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. He's also known for collecting women like trophies and moving on the moment someone more interesting appears. And you're known for being cold and calculating and caring more about power than people. The words came out before she could stop them. Jessica immediately regretted them, waiting for anger or punishment or whatever came next when you insulted royalty to their face. Instead, Nathaniel smiled, really smiled this time, showing teeth. No, that's better. What's better? You being honest instead of terrified. I was starting to wonder if you'd lost all that fire I've seen you display at dinner parties. Jessica stared at him. You've seen me at dinner parties? I've seen you everywhere. Moon festivals, harvest celebrations, winter balls. You never notice me, but I notice you. Her breath caught. Why? Because you're the only woman in this entire kingdom who looks at me and sees a problem rather than an opportunity. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Do you have any idea how rare that is? His fingers were warm against her skin. Jessica couldn't remember anyone ever touching her like that. Gentle and deliberate and entirely focused. This is crazy, she whispered, or undoubtedly. You should leave. I should, but I'm not going to. Why not? Because you invited me under your sheets, and I want to know what happens next. Jessica's face flamed. I didn't invite you. I invited Eden Maxwell. Yes, we've established that. His thumb brushed along her jawline. But Eden Maxwell isn't here. I am. So what happens next, Jessica? She should push him away, should demand he leave, should maintain whatever dignity she had left after this disaster of an evening. Instead, she heard herself whisper, I don't know. Then perhaps we should figure it out together. He leaned closer, close enough that she could feel his breath against her lips. Her eyes started to drift closed, anticipation making her dizzy. Then Nathaniel stepped back abruptly. "But not tonight," he said, his voice perfectly controlled, while Jessica struggled to remember how to breathe. "Tonight was about seeing if you meant what you wrote. And I have my answer." Jessica felt like she had been dropped from a great height. "What answer?" "You meant it. Maybe not for me specifically, but you meant the desire behind it. The wanting." He walked back toward the window. "That's enough for now." "Enough for what?" He paused at the window, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Enough to make this interesting." "I don't understand." "You will." He climbed onto the window ledge with the same ease he had entered. "Sleep well, Jessica Hampton. I suspect you'll be thinking about tonight for quite some time." He disappeared into the darkness before she could respond. Jessica stood frozen in the middle of her bedroom, or her mind spinning. The Alpha King had just climbed through her window, nearly kissed her, and then left with no explanation, beyond cryptic promises about things being interesting. She walked to the window on shaking legs and looked out into the garden. No sign of him. He had vanished as completely as if he had never been there at all, except for the faint scent of his cologne still lingering in her room, and the memory of his thumb against her jaw, and the absolutely terrifying realization that she had wanted him to kiss her. Not Eden Maxwell, Nathaniel Williamson, the king. Jessica closed the window and leaned against it, pressing her hands to her burning face. What had she done? More importantly, what was going to happen next? Chapter 4. The Game Between a King and a Woman. Jessica spent the next 3 days convinced that guards would arrive at any moment to arrest her for inappropriate conduct with royalty. They didn't come. Instead, something worse happened. Nathaniel Williamson appeared everywhere. He attended a dinner at the Cantrell estate that Jessica's family had also been invited to. He showed up at the library where Jessica often spent her afternoons, browsing the philosophy section like he had every right to be there. He walked through the gardens she used as a shortcut to her friend Kimora Chandler's house, and every single time he looked directly at her. Not with anger or disgust or any of the reactions she had expected, but with something that looked dangerously close to amusement, like they shared a secret, which they did, Jessica supposed. A terrible, mortifying secret that made her want to sink through the floor every time she remembered it. "You're being paranoid," Kimora said, as they sat in her drawing room, drinking tea and pretending to discuss the latest fashions. "The king has better things to do than follow you around." "I'm not being paranoid. He was at the library yesterday, the philosophy section. Why would the Alpha King be browsing philosophy? Maybe he likes philosophy. He likes making me uncomfortable." Kimora set down her teacup, studying Jessica with the kind of knowing look that came from years of friendship. "What happened between you two?" "Nothing happened. You're a terrible liar. You've been acting strange ever since the Moon Festival. Did he say something to you?" Jessica considered telling her the truth. Kimora would understand, probably. And she might even have useful advice. But the words wouldn't come. How could she explain that she had accidentally sent the king an invitation to her bed, and instead of punishing her, he had climbed through her window and nearly kissed her? "He just spoke to me briefly," Jessica said instead. "About books." "Books?" Kimora's tone suggested she didn't believe a word of it. "The most powerful man in the kingdom spoke to you about books, and now you're terrified of running into him." "I'm not terrified. I'm simply avoiding unnecessary interactions." "For 3 days straight?" Before Jessica could answer, a servant appeared in the doorway. "Lady Chandler, Lady Hampton, you have visitors." Jessica's stomach dropped. Please not the king. Please not here. But the man who walked into Kimora's drawing room wasn't Nathaniel Williamson. It was Eden Maxwell. He looked as handsome as ever, his smile bright and confident as he bowed to both women. Lady Chandler, Lady Hampton, I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, Kimora said smoothly, though Jessica could see the curiosity in her eyes. Please join us. Eden sat across from Jessica, his attention focused entirely on her, in a way that would have thrilled her a week ago. Now it just made her feel guilty, though she couldn't quite explain why. I was hoping to speak with you, Lady Hampton, Eden said, if you're amenable. Of course. Kimora stood immediately. I should check on something in the kitchen. Please excuse me. She disappeared before Jessica could protest, leaving her alone with the man she had meant to send that note to, the man she had been fascinated by for months, the man who suddenly seemed far less interesting than he had before. I've been meaning to speak with you for some time, Eden said once they were alone, but you're difficult to catch at social events, always disappearing into corners or leaving early. I'm not much for crowds. I've noticed. I find it refreshing, actually. Most women seem to live for these gatherings. He leaned forward slightly. I enjoyed our conversation about philosophy last month. You have interesting opinions. Thank you. I was wondering if you might like to continue that conversation. Perhaps over dinner. I know a lovely restaurant in the Merchant District. A week ago, Jessica would have said yes immediately. Would have been thrilled that Eden Maxwell wanted to spend time with her alone. Now, all she could think about was Nathaniel's thumb against her jaw. His voice saying her name, the way he had looked at her like she was a puzzle worth solving. That's very kind, she heard herself say. But I'm not sure it would be appropriate. Eden's smile faltered slightly. Not appropriate. For us to dine alone, people might assume things. Would that be so terrible? People assuming we were courting? Yes, Jessica wanted to say. Because I accidentally sent the king a note meant for you, and now everything is complicated and confusing, and I can't stop thinking about someone I shouldn't be thinking about. Instead, she said, I'm not looking to court anyone right now. It was a diplomatic answer, a safe answer, and a complete lie. Eden studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. I see. Well, if you change your mind, please let me know. He stood, bowed politely, and left. Jessica sat alone in Kimora's drawing room, feeling like she had just made a terrible mistake. But what was the alternative? Accept Eden's invitation while she was clearly distracted by someone else? Pretend everything was normal when her entire world had tilted sideways? He's gone already. Kimora reappeared, looking disappointed. I was hoping for at least an hour of gossip material. There's nothing to gossip about. He asked you to dinner, didn't he? How did you? Because that's what men like Eden Maxwell do. They identify interesting women and pursue them with dinner invitations. Kimora sat down across from her. And you turned him down, judging by how quickly he left. Jessica didn't deny it. Kimora leaned back, studying her friend. This is about the king, isn't it? What? No, that's ridiculous. Is it? Or you've been acting strange since the Moon Festival. The king has been appearing in unusual places. Eden Maxwell asks you to dinner, and you refuse. She smiled knowingly. Something happened between you and Nathaniel Williamson. Jessica's silence was answer enough. Oh, this is interesting, Kimora breathed. Tell me everything. There's nothing to tell. You're an even worse liar than I thought. Kimora poured more tea for both of them. Did he speak to you at the festival? After. He spoke to me after. And? Jessica hesitated, then decided she needed to tell someone before she went insane. I may have accidentally sent him a somewhat inappropriate note. Kimora's eyes went wide. You what? It was meant for Eden, but the servant delivered it to the king instead. What did the note say? Jessica's face burned. Something about catching him under my sheets. Kimora choked on her tea. When she recovered, she was staring at Jessica with a mixture of horror and fascination. You sent the Alpha King a note about your bed? By accident. And what did he do? He came to my window that night. Now Kimora looked genuinely shocked. He came to your house? The king climbed through your window? Yes. And then what happened? We talked. He nearly kissed me. Then he left. There was a long silence. Kimora set down her teacup very carefully. Jessica, she said slowly, the Alpha King climbed through your bedroom window, nearly kissed you, and then just left? Yes. And since then he's been appearing everywhere you go? Yes. Oh my God, Kimora whispered. He's courting you. Don't be ridiculous. Kings don't court unmarried noblewomen who insult them at dinner parties. This one apparently does. Kimora grabbed Jessica's hands. Don't you see? He's interested. Really interested. Why else would he accept an invitation he knew wasn't meant for him? Why else would he risk being seen in questionable places just to run into you? Jessica pulled her hands away. You're reading too much into this. He's probably just bored and found the whole situation amusing. Men like Nathaniel Williamson don't get bored. They get focused. Kimora stood suddenly. We need to get you to more social events. If he's looking for you, we should make sure he finds you somewhere appropriate. That's the opposite of what I want. No, it's exactly what you want. You just don't realize it yet. Before Jessica could argue, another servant appeared. Lady Hampton, there's a message for you. Jessica took the sealed envelope with trembling fingers. The wax seal bore the royal crest. Open it, Kimora whispered. Jessica broke the seal and unfolded the parchment. The handwriting was the same elegant script from the note she had received after the Moon Festival. The Royal Library has acquired several new philosophy texts that might interest you. You're welcome to view them tomorrow afternoon. 3rd floor, East Wing. No signature. Just an invitation that was clearly more than just an invitation. Kimora read over her shoulder and squealed. He's asking you to meet him, privately, in the Royal Library. He's offering to show me books. He's offering you an excuse to be alone with him in a location where it won't cause a scandal. Kimora grabbed her shoulders. Jessica, what, you have to go? I absolutely do not have to go. Yes, you do. Because if you don't, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what might have happened. And you hate wondering. That was unfortunately true. Jessica despised uncertainty more than almost anything. This is insane, she muttered. This is exciting. There's a difference. Jessica looked at the invitation again. Tomorrow afternoon, the Royal Library. A private meeting with the most powerful man in the kingdom. She should refuse, should send back a polite message declining the invitation. Instead, she heard herself say, I'll need to borrow a dress, something appropriate for the library. Kimora's smile was triumphant. I have just the thing. Chapter 5. The truth she was never meant to discover. The Royal Library was even more impressive than Jessica had imagined. 3 stories of books stretched from floor to ceiling, with elegant staircases connecting each level. Afternoon sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting patterns across the polished wooden floors. The air smelled of parchment and leather and knowledge. Jessica climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, her borrowed dress rustling with each step. Kimora had chosen deep blue silk that somehow made Jessica feel both elegant and exposed. Her friend had insisted it was perfect for a clandestine meeting with royalty. Jessica still thought this entire situation was madness. The East Wing was quieter, more secluded. Fewer people wandered these shelves, which meant fewer witnesses to whatever was about to happen. She found Nathaniel in the philosophy section, exactly where she had expected him to be. He stood with his back to her, out examining a leather-bound volume. "You came," he said without turning around. "You invited me. It seemed rude to refuse. Since when do you care about being rude?" He replaced the book and turned to face her. His eyes travelled over her dress briefly before meeting her gaze. "You look different. I borrowed the dress from a friend. I wasn't talking about the dress." Jessica's pulse quickened. "Then what were you talking about? You look nervous. You're never nervous." "I'm always nervous. I'm just good at hiding it." "Not today." He moved closer, and Jessica forced herself to hold her ground. "Why did you really come?" "You said there were new philosophy texts." "That was an excuse. We both know it." "Then why did you invite me?" Nathaniel smiled slightly. "Or because I enjoy watching you try to maintain composure while your mind races through 1,000 different scenarios. That's cruel. Perhaps. But it's also honest." He gestured to a small reading area tucked between the shelves, 2 chairs positioned near a window overlooking the gardens. "Sit with me." It wasn't a request. Kings didn't make requests, but he waited for her to move first, giving her the choice. Jessica sat, and Nathaniel took the chair across from her. The afternoon light caught the angles of his face, making him look less like a king and more like a man. An attractive man who was watching her with unsettling intensity. "I've been thinking about something you said," Nathaniel began. "That night in your chamber. You said you wanted to feel like you mattered to someone." Jessica looked away, too embarrassed by the memory of her honesty. "I was upset. I didn't mean..." "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Take back something true just because it made you vulnerable." He leaned forward slightly. "You do matter, Jessica. To more people than you realize. My family sees me as a problem. Society sees me as a failure. The only people who seem to enjoy my company are the friends who are kind enough to overlook my shortcomings. Is that really what you think?" "It's what I know." Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, studying her. Then he said, "Do you know what I see when I look at you? Someone who accidentally sent you an inappropriate message? I see someone brave enough to write exactly what she wanted. Consequences be damned. Someone intelligent enough to question ideas instead of accepting them blindly. Someone honest in a world full of performers." He paused. "I see someone worth pursuing." Jessica's breath caught. "You can't mean that." "Why not?" "Because I'm nobody. An unmarried noblewoman approaching 30 with no prospects and no political value. You're someone who challenges me. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" He stood, walking to the window. "Every person I meet wants something from me. Power, access, favors. They smile and agree, and tell me what they think I want to hear. But you?" He turned back to face her. "You told me my reputation for being cold and calculating was worse than Eden Maxwell's reputation for collecting women like trophies. I apologized for that. I didn't want an apology. I wanted more of that honesty." Jessica stood as well, needing to move. I don't understand what you want from me." "I want to know you. The real you, not the version you show at social events." "Why?" "Because you're interesting. Because you wrote the boldest message I've received in years. Because every time I think I understand you, you surprise me again." He crossed the space between them in 3 strides. "Because I can't stop thinking about that night in your chamber." Jessica's back hit the bookshelf. She hadn't even realized she was retreating. "This is inappropriate." "Yes. You're the king." I'm aware. People would talk. They already talk about you being unmarried, about me being unmarriageable. Let them talk about something more interesting. He was close enough now that she could see the flecks of gold in his eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from him. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Do what? Whatever this is. I don't know the rules. There are no rules. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Just you and me, and whatever happens between us. And what happens between us? That depends on what you want. I don't know what I want. Yes, you do. You're just afraid to admit it. He was right. She did know, had known since that night in her chamber when he had nearly kissed her and walked away. She wanted him. Not because he was king. Not because of power or status or any of the logical reasons that should matter. She wanted him because he looked at her like she was worth seeing. Because he challenged her instead of trying to please her. Because he made her feel alive in a way she never had before. This is terrifying, she breathed. Good things usually are. He leaned closer, giving her time to pull away, to refuse, to maintain whatever safety she had left. Jessica didn't pull away. His lips met hers softly at first, questioning, then deeper as she responded, her hands coming up to grip his jacket. He tasted like mint and certainty, and Jessica felt something inside her unlock. This was what she had wanted when she wrote that note. Not just physical attraction, though there was plenty of that. But connection. Recognition. Someone who saw her completely and didn't look away. Nathaniel pulled back slightly, his forehead resting against hers. Still terrified. More than ever. Good. That means you're paying attention. Jessica laughed despite herself, the sound breathless and surprised. You're nothing like I expected. Neither are you. He kissed her again, much briefer this time. I should let you go before someone finds us and causes a scandal. Probably wise, but neither of them moved. Jessica, he said softly, and something in the way he said her name made her chest ache. I need you to understand something. This isn't a game to me. You aren't a distraction or an amusement. Then what am I? You're someone I want, genuinely want, and I'm trying very hard not to pressure you into wanting me back. I think it's too late for that. His smile was slow and devastating. Is it? Before she could answer, voices echoed from the stairwell. Someone was coming to the third floor. Nathaniel stepped back immediately, putting proper distance between them. You should leave through the south entrance. It's less visible from the main hall. Jessica nodded, her mind still spinning. She started toward the exit, then paused. When will I see you again? Soon, I'll find you. How? The same way I've been finding you, by paying attention to where you go. She should have found that unsettling. Instead, it sent warmth spreading through her chest. Jessica left through the south entrance, her lips still tingling from his kiss, her mind replaying every word of their conversation. She barely remembered the walk back to Kimora's house, where she was supposed to return the borrowed dress. Her friend took one look at her face and squealed, "He kissed you!" "What? How did you? You're glowing. You never glow. Tell me everything," Jessica told her. About the library, the conversation, the kiss that had felt like falling and flying simultaneously. "This is the most romantic thing I've ever heard," Kimora breathed when she finished. "The Alpha King is in love with you." "He's not in love with me. He's interested. There's a difference." "For now, but give it time." Kimora grabbed her hands. "Jessica, this could be everything you've ever wanted. Someone who sees you. Someone who challenges you. Someone who chose you. Or it could be a disaster that ruins my reputation and my family's standing. Since when do you care about reputation?" Since never, Jessica realized. She had never cared what people thought, had never performed for society's approval. So why was she hesitating now? Because this mattered, because Nathaniel mattered, because for the first time in her life, she had something real to lose. "I need to go home," she said suddenly. "I need to think." "About what?" "Now you like him. He likes you. What's there to think about?" "Everything. Consequences. Implications. What happens next? What happens next is you let yourself be happy for once in your life." Jessica changed back into her own dress and left, Kimora's words echoing in her mind. Let yourself be happy. When had she last been truly happy? When had she last felt like something was possible instead of impossible? She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the figure waiting outside her house until she was nearly at the door. Eden Maxwell stood on her front steps, looking serious in a way she had never seen him before. "Lady Hampton," he said formally, "I need to speak with you." Jessica's stomach sank. "Of course. What about?" "About my intentions. And yours." He stepped closer. "I've been thinking about our conversation at Lady Chandler's house, about how you said you weren't looking to court anyone." "I remember. I should have been more direct then. Should have told you exactly what I wanted, instead of hiding behind polite dinner invitations." He took a breath. "Jessica, I want to court you, formally, with the intention of marriage." The words should have thrilled her. A week ago, they would have. Now they just made her feel trapped. "Eden, I'm flattered, but please let me finish." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "This is a letter to your father, requesting permission to court you officially. I know the timing might seem sudden, but I've been thinking about this for months. You're different from other women. Smarter, more interesting, more honest." Jessica stared at the letter, her mind racing. But Eden was offering her everything she thought she wanted. Security, respect, a marriage to someone intelligent and kind. Everything except the feeling she had when Nathaniel kissed her. "I can't accept this," she said, quietly. "Why not? Is there someone else?" "Yes," she wanted to say. "There's someone who climbs through windows and challenges me and makes me feel like I'm on fire." Instead, she said, "I'm not ready for courtship. Not with you. Not with anyone." It was kinder than the truth. Eden's expression hardened slightly. "I see. May I ask if this has anything to do with recent rumors?" Jessica's blood ran cold. "What rumors?" "About you and the Alpha King. About private meetings. About—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "I don't believe gossip, but people are talking." Of course they were. Bushi and Nathaniel had been seen together at multiple events. The library visit had probably been witnessed by someone. Nothing stayed secret for long in the capital. "The king and I have spoken a few times," Jessica said carefully. "Nothing more." "Good. Because a woman's reputation is fragile, Jessica. Even the suggestion of impropriety with someone like Nathaniel Williamson could ruin your prospects entirely." There was warning in his tone. Concern, maybe, but also judgment. And suddenly Jessica understood what Eden was really offering. Not partnership or true affection, but protection. Safety. A way to avoid scandal by accepting the first suitable proposal that came along. "Thank you for your concern," she said coldly, "but I'm capable of managing my own reputation. I'm not sure you understand the stakes." "I understand perfectly what you're offering to save me from myself, from my inability to behave appropriately, from whatever disaster you think I'm headed toward." She stepped closer. "But I don't need saving, Eden. I need someone who trusts me to make my own choices." "Even when those choices involve the king?" "Especially then." Eden's jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe. But it's my mistake to make." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded stiffly. "I hope you don't regret this, Lady Hampton." He left without another word. Jessica watched him go, her heart pounding. She had just turned down a proposal from a suitable nobleman, had essentially admitted to an interest in the king, had chosen uncertainty over safety. Her mother would be furious. Her father would be disappointed. Society would whisper even louder than before. But for the first time in her life, Jessica felt like she was choosing what she actually wanted instead of what everyone else expected. She just hoped it was worth it. Chapter 6. The Proposal That Changed Everything. The confrontation with her mother happened exactly as Jessica had predicted. Lydia Hampton appeared in her chamber the morning after Eden's proposal, her face tight with fury. "Eden Maxwell came to your father yesterday. Do you know what he told him?" Jessica set down her book. "That I refused his courtship." "You refused." Lydia's voice rose. "You refused a proposal from one of the most eligible men in the kingdom. Have you lost your mind?" "I don't want to marry Eden Maxwell. What you want is irrelevant. You're 27 years old with no prospects and a reputation for speaking out of turn. Eden Maxwell was willing to overlook all of that, and you threw it away?" "He wasn't overlooking anything. He was offering to tolerate me in exchange for the appearance of a respectable marriage." Lydia's hands clenched. "And what exactly is wrong with that? Respectable marriages are built on far less." "I want more than less. You want fairy tales, love stories, romance." Her mother's laugh was bitter. "Life isn't a romance, Jessica. It's compromise and duty, and making the best of whatever opportunities appear." "Then maybe I'd rather have nothing than settle for less than I deserve." "Nothing is exactly what you'll have if you keep this up. Nothing but whispers and pity, and a future as a burden to your family." The words hit harder than Jessica expected, not because they were cruel, but because they were genuinely what her mother believed. "Is that really what you think of me?" Jessica asked quietly. "A burden?" Lydia's expression softened slightly. "I think you're brilliant and stubborn and entirely too honest for your own good. I think you've been blessed with advantages that you refuse to use properly. And I think you're throwing away your future for reasons you refuse to explain." "What if I told you I had feelings for someone else?" "Then I would ask who, and whether those feelings were reciprocated by someone with the means to actually marry you." Jessica hesitated. She couldn't tell her mother about Nathaniel. Not yet. Not when she didn't even fully understand what was happening between them herself. "Just trust me," she said instead. "Please." "Trust you to do what? Ruin yourself?" Before Jessica could answer, her father Morris appeared in the doorway. "Lydia, we have a visitor. You should come downstairs." "Who is it?" "Eden Maxwell. He's asking to speak with Jessica." Jessica's stomach dropped. "I already told him, and apparently he's not satisfied with your answer." Morris looked at his daughter with an expression somewhere between disappointment and concern. "He's brought his father, and a formal proposal." Of course he had. Eden wasn't the type to accept rejection easily. He probably thought one more conversation would change her mind. Jessica followed her parents downstairs, her mind racing. She would have to refuse again, more firmly this time, in front of witnesses, in a way that would make it absolutely clear she had no interest in becoming Eden Maxwell's wife. But when she entered the drawing room and saw who was already there, every thought in her head evaporated. Nathaniel Williamson stood by the window, dressed in formal royal attire. Eden and his father, Gerald Maxwell, sat on the opposite side of the room, looking increasingly uncomfortable. The Alpha King had come to her house. "Your Majesty," Morris stammered, bowing deeply. Lydia curtsied beside him, her face pale with shock. Nathaniel acknowledged them with a brief nod, but his attention was fixed on Jessica. "Lady Hampton, I apologize for the intrusion." "You're not intruding," Jessica managed, though her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "You're always welcome." "Thank you." He glanced at Eden. "Though it seems I've interrupted something." Eden stood, his posture stiff. "Well, I came to speak with Lady Hampton about my proposal of courtship." "I'm aware." Nathaniel's tone was perfectly polite and absolutely final. "Unfortunately, Lady Hampton won't be accepting your proposal." The room went completely silent. Gerald Maxwell recovered first. "Your Majesty, with all respect, I'm not sure you're in a position to speak for Lady Hampton's intentions." "Aren't I?" Nathaniel's gaze didn't leave Jessica's face. "Perhaps you should ask her directly." All eyes turned to Jessica. Her mother looked terrified. Her father looked confused. Eden looked angry. And Nathaniel looked entirely too calm for someone who had just walked into a private family matter and declared ownership. "Is this true?" Eden demanded. "Are you refusing me because of him?" Jessica took a deep breath. This was it. Or the moment where she either chose safety or took the biggest risk of her life. "Yes," she said clearly. "I'm refusing you because of him." Lydia gasped. Morris sat down heavily. Gerald Maxwell looked like he wanted to argue, but didn't quite dare with the king standing right there. Eden's face hardened. "I see. And does His Majesty share your feelings? Or are you throwing away a legitimate proposal for something that will never materialize?" "That's enough," Nathaniel said, his voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. "You've had your answer. Accept it with dignity." "Dignity?" Eden laughed harshly. "You want to talk about dignity? You've been pursuing a noblewoman half the kingdom knows is unmarriageable. Everyone will assume the worst. Let them assume. This will ruin her." "No," Nathaniel said calmly. "This will elevate her. Because Jessica Hampton isn't going to be my mistress or my passing interest." He turned to face Jessica fully, and the expression in his eyes made her breath stop. "She's going to be my queen." The room exploded into chaos. Lydia actually swayed, grabbing Morris's arm for support. Gerald Maxwell stood abruptly, mouth opening and closing without sound. Eden stared at Nathaniel like he had lost his mind, and Jessica felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. "What?" she whispered. Nathaniel crossed the room until he stood directly in front of her. Then, in full view of her parents, and Eden Maxwell and anyone else who might be watching, the Alpha King knelt. "I'm asking you to marry me," he said simply. "Not for political alliance, not for convenience, but because you're the only woman who ever dared to invite me into her bed. And I intend to accept that invitation for the rest of our lives." Jessica stared down at him, her mind completely blank. The Alpha King was kneeling in her family's drawing room, proposing marriage, making promises that sounded like forever. "You can't be serious," she managed. "I've never been more serious about anything. We barely know each other. I know you write philosophy in the margins of books. I know you can't stand false flattery. I know you value honesty over comfort and truth over politeness. I know you kissed me in the royal library like you'd been waiting your whole life for permission." He reached for her hand. "And I know I want to spend the rest of my life learning everything else. But I'm perfect? Yes, I'm aware. Unmarriageable. Everyone says so. Everyone is wrong." He stood, still holding her hand. "Court, the question isn't whether you're suitable for me. The question is whether I'm suitable for you. Whether you can tolerate a man who climbs through windows and accepts invitations that weren't meant for him." Jessica's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. "This is insane. This is inevitable. We've been heading here since the moment you wrote that note. I wrote it for someone else. You wrote it for whoever was brave enough to claim it. I did. And now I'm claiming you, if you'll have me. Her parents were watching. Eden was watching. The whole world felt like it was watching. But all Jessica could see was Nathaniel, looking at her like she was worth everything. Yes, she whispered. His smile was slow and triumphant. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you, not even though you're arrogant and manipulative and you climbed through my window. Especially because I climbed through your window. He kissed her then, in front of everyone, deep and claiming and absolutely inappropriate. Jessica didn't care. When they finally broke apart, Lydia had recovered enough to speak. Your Majesty, this is all very sudden. Perhaps we should discuss. There's nothing to discuss, Nathaniel said firmly. Your daughter has accepted my proposal. The wedding will take place within the month. The month? Morris nearly choked. But the preparations will be handled by the royal staff. You need only show up and look proud. He turned back to Jessica. Unless you have objections to a quick wedding? The sooner the better, Jessica said, surprising herself, before I come to my senses. You already have. That's why you said yes. Eden had been silent through the entire exchange, but now he stood. Congratulations, Lady Hampton. I hope you know what you're doing. There was no malice in his voice, just genuine concern. I don't, Jessica admitted. But I'm doing it anyway. He nodded once, then left with his father following behind. The moment they were gone, Lydia rounded on Nathaniel. Your Majesty, I must protest. My daughter's reputation will be impeccable as my betrothed and future queen. He glanced at Morris. I assume I have your blessing. What else could her father say? Of course, Your Majesty. Excellent. I'll send the official announcement to the papers tomorrow. Jessica, I'll call on you later this week to discuss details. He kissed her hand, nodded to her parents, and left. The silence after his departure was deafening. Lydia sat down slowly. What just happened? I think, Morris said faintly, our daughter just got engaged to the Alpha King. Because of a note, Jessica added, still trying to process everything herself. A note that was supposed to go to someone else. Her mother looked at her for a long moment. Then, despite everything, she laughed. Only you, Jessica. Only you could accidentally seduce a king. Chapter 7. The Woman Who Dared to Invite a King. The official announcement appeared in every paper the next morning. His Majesty Alpha, King Nathaniel Williamson, is pleased to announce his engagement to Lady Jessica Hampton. The wedding will take place at the royal castle within the month. Jessica read it 3 times before accepting it was real. The capital exploded with gossip. Some praised the king's choice, others questioned it. Everyone had an opinion about the unmarried noblewoman who had somehow captured the attention of the most powerful man in the kingdom. Jessica ignored all of it. She had more important things to worry about, like the fact that she was going to marry Nathaniel in less than 4 weeks, and still didn't fully understand how they had gotten here. He came to visit her 3 days after the engagement announcement, appearing at her door like it was the most natural thing in the world. Walk with me, he said, instead of a greeting. Jessica grabbed her cloak and followed him into the garden behind her house. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of flowers and approaching rain. How are you handling the attention? Nathaniel asked, once they were alone among the trees. By pretending it doesn't exist. How are you handling people questioning your judgment? The same way I handle everything, by not caring what they think. They walked in silence for a moment, the sound of their footsteps soft on the garden path. Are you nervous? Jessica asked quietly. About marrying you? No. About what comes after? He stopped walking, turning to face her. What comes after is we figure out how to be married, how to balance your need for independence with my need to protect you, how to build something real instead of just fulfilling royal obligations. You make it sound simple. It won't be simple, but it will be worth it. He reached for her hand. I need you to understand something. I didn't propose because of duty or pressure or political strategy. I proposed because I want you. All of you, including the parts that drive me crazy. I haven't driven you crazy yet. You drove me crazy the moment you sent that note. Everything since then has just been details. Jessica laughed, despite the nervousness still churning in her stomach. I can't believe this is actually happening. Believe it, because in 3 weeks, you're going to stand in front of the entire kingdom and promise to spend the rest of your life with me. That's terrifying. Good. If you weren't terrified, I'd worry you weren't taking this seriously. He pulled her closer, and Jessica let herself lean into him. This man who had climbed through her window, who had accepted an invitation that wasn't meant for him, who had somehow seen past every defense she had ever built and decided she was worth fighting for. "Can I ask you something?" she said against his chest. "Anything." "Why did you really come that night? To my window? You could have just ignored the note." Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, his hand moving gently through her hair. "Because I'd been watching you for years, waiting for any sign that you saw me as more than just a title. And then that note arrived, and even though it wasn't meant for me, it felt like fate giving me an opening I'd been waiting for." Jessica pulled back to look at him. "You've been watching me for years, since you were 19 and tried to argue with the Duke of Cantrell about agricultural reform at your first moon festival. You were terrified and brilliant, and you didn't back down even when he got angry. You remember that? I remember everything about you, Jessica. Every debate, every book you've carried to social events, every time you've hidden in corners to avoid people who bore you." He cupped her face gently. "I've been waiting for you to notice me for almost a decade. That note just gave me an excuse to make you pay attention." Tears pricked her eyes. "That's the most romantic and slightly creepy thing anyone has ever said to me. I contain multitudes." She kissed him then, pouring everything she couldn't say into the gesture. Gratitude, terror, hope. The overwhelming feeling that somehow, against all odds, she had found exactly what she needed. When they broke apart, Nathaniel rested his forehead against hers. 3 weeks, Jessica. Then you're mine forever." 3 weeks, she repeated. "Then we figure out how to do this. Together. Together." The wedding preparations passed in a blur of fittings and meetings and decisions about things Jessica had never considered before. Her mother hovered constantly, thrilled and anxious in equal measure. Her father walked around looking vaguely stunned. Her younger cousin Gabriella couldn't stop staring at her engagement ring. But through it all, Nathaniel was there. Not overwhelming or controlling, but present. Checking in. Making sure she was comfortable with decisions. Giving her space when she needed it, and a closeness when she wanted it. He was nothing like she expected a king to be. He was better. The night before the wedding, Jessica stood in her chamber one last time, looking at the window Nathaniel had climbed through all those weeks ago. Tomorrow, everything would change, as she would become a queen, would have responsibilities and expectations that terrified her. But she would also have Nathaniel. There was a knock on her window. Jessica's heart jumped. She crossed the room and opened it to find Nathaniel perched on the ledge, looking far too pleased with himself. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "It's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding." "I don't believe in luck. I believe in making my own fate." He climbed through the window with practiced ease. "Besides, I couldn't sleep. Nervous? Impatient. There's a difference." He pulled her close, and Jessica wrapped her arms around him, breathing in the scent that had become as familiar as her own. "Tomorrow changes everything," she said quietly. "Tomorrow makes everything official, but nothing actually changes. You're still you. I'm still me. We're still figuring this out together. What if I'm terrible at being queen? Then you'll be terrible at it in interesting ways that make everyone's life more exciting." He kissed the top of her head. "Stop worrying about what you're supposed to be, and just be who you are. That's who I'm marrying. A woman who accidentally sent you a scandalous note? A woman brave enough to write exactly what she wanted. A woman who chose me when she could have chosen safety." He tilted her face up to meet his gaze. "A woman who dared to invite a king into her bed, and then had the courage to actually let him in." Jessica smiled despite the tears threatening to fall. "I love you." It was the first time she had said it out loud. Nathaniel's expression softened into something that stole her breath. "I know. I've known since you kissed me in the library, like you were claiming something that already belonged to you." "When did you know? That you loved me?" "The moment you told me my reputation was worse than Eden Maxwell's. Anyone else would have been terrified of insulting me. You just saw it as stating facts. I'm still not sure you should marry someone who insults you regularly. I'm counting on it. Someone needs to keep me honest." He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promises about tomorrow and every day after. When he finally pulled away, he reached into his pocket and drew out a familiar piece of parchment, her original note, creased from being folded and carried. "I'm keeping this," he said. As a reminder of the day my life changed, because a beautiful woman made a mistake that turned out to be exactly right." Jessica took the note, reading her own handwriting one more time. "If I catch you under my sheets, you will—" "How would you finish it now?" Nathaniel asked. "That sentence you left incomplete." Jessica thought about everything that had happened. The midnight visit, the library kiss, the proposal that had changed her entire world. Then she smiled and looked up at the man who had claimed an invitation that was never meant for him and turned it into forever. "If I catch you under my sheets, you will stay there for the rest of our lives." "That's the plan," Nathaniel murmured, pulling her close again. "That's exactly the plan." And the next day, in front of the entire kingdom, Jessica Hampton became Queen Jessica Williamson. Not because she was perfect or suitable or anything people expected, but because she had been brave enough to write 8 reckless words, and the king had been waiting his whole life for someone exactly like her. If you love stories where one reckless mistake changes everything, where a single daring message awakens the attention of the most powerful man in the kingdom, and where a woman discovers that the man she accidentally tempted is the only one who truly sees her, then welcome to Oriel Romance Library, where every story begins with danger and ends with a love worth fighting for.